Hey, welcome back to the channel, and I'm finally here to do the video that people have been requesting for quite some time now. They want to know, how do I process my microphone, this Neumann U87 AI with the Universal Audio Apollo Twin X, which sits right here on my desk. I've had this setup, this interface, and this microphone for 2 or 3 years now, and it's been an evolution. I used to have the TLM 103, I've used the RE20, I've used the SM7B, I used this Soundcraft mixer as my interface before I got into the Apollo Twin X. I was using these DBX 286s and 266s for a while, so I've been on quite this journey, but I ultimately arrived at this microphone and this interface, and now I've been using, honestly, these same settings for quite some time. But people say, hey, the sound is great. I really like the way your mic and your room sounds. Yes, the room is also very important. Everything I'm about to show you here with these settings, they do matter. But the room and how it's treated, and acoustically how I've insulated it and I've tried to absorb the sound in this room so that there's no reverberations, I think that's equally important to any or all of the settings which I'm about to show you. I also think you need to hear what this mic sounds like completely raw and unprocessed, so watch this for just a second. Let me do my clean U87 settings. Okay, here's the microphone, completely unprocessed. And maybe I'm guilty of over-processing my microphone. To be very honest with you, maybe I process it too much when you hear it back-to-back with this. But I'll go back to this sound. This is how I've been doing it. This is what people have complimented me on. So without further delay, let me share the settings. This is my signal chain. I'm using the SSL E-Channel 4000 as my unison preamp. Gained up at 28.5 dB. You can see that right here on the mic settings. We're not on the line settings, on the mic settings. The transformer button is not pushed. Obviously, we're not phase reversing, and obviously we're not putting any pad there. In terms of dynamics, nothing here on the compressor section, but I am using expansion. And you can see my settings here, threshold just a little bit below -12, the range a little bit below 5, and the release as fast as possible. Fast attack, that light is on. Fast release. And watch when I don't talk. I want you to watch these two lights here, these two LEDs. Right at 6, as in -6, as in it's reducing 6 dB of whatever noise this room or this microphone are producing. I don't want to do it too much more than that, but you'll hear if I turn it off. Now, put on headphones or listen with your studio monitor. Watch when I turn this off. Sounds a little bit different. Maybe you can hear a little bit of the room noise, and then watch. Cuts down on a little bit of just something, that ambiance, I think, that exists in this room. I can hear it here. Hopefully you can too. By the way, it's also very important to note that I'm on expansion mode here, not gate 1 or gate 2. Those provide a little bit of chatter. They're a little bit choppy for me, at least in my setup, this mic and my voice. So I've always used expansion. Then in terms of the filters, on the low cut side, low cut, high pass, same thing. Not cutting anything low here. I am cutting the top end at about 15,000. So that's interesting to take note of. Then we get into the EQ section. So what I do here in this entire chain is EQ and then compression. I feel like that's the best way to handle vocals. Compression at the end kind of glues everything together. I'm doing all my EQ first, and then compression. So high frequency here, I'm boosting, and each one of these dots is about 3 dB. At, let's call it 4,000, I'm boosting about 3 dB. The bell curve button is not on. Then here I'm de-essing just a little bit. I'm taking away maybe 1 dB at about 6,500 hertz. I do know that is my sibilant range, so hopefully that didn't scintillate your ears. But I'm taking away a dB there on a very tight Q, almost a 3. Then in the low mids, I'm cutting here a significant amount. I'm cutting about 5 dB at about 260 or 70 hertz. This is something I do on all my mics. It's my voice. It's an area that my voice needs help cutting. Watch, if I bring this up, you can kind of see, can you hear how boxy that sounds all of a sudden? let me really emphasize it. Like, it's that frequency right there that I just do not like. So I bring that back out. I guess I should show you along the way too, how these things sound different. So then this is on a fairly tight Q at about a 2. Like I said, 250, 60, 70 hertz, somewhere in there. And then on the low end here, I'm boosting 100 hertz to about 3 dB, and I am doing it on a little bit of a tighter bell curve here. And watch, if I pump this all the way up, I mean, that's way too much. Now I'm Howard Stern. But I'll bring that down to kind of where it was before. And all of this, like you can see here with EQ on versus now with EQ off. Is it making a little bit of a difference? Like, watch, here's it off. Again, listen critically, and I'll turn it back on. It kind of sharpens things up. It refines things here just a little bit. Okay, on the slider, I'm boosting maybe 2 dB. I'm kind of pushing this plug-in a little bit. I've also got the output knob turned up just a hair. Now, all of the gain settings here are going to be different from me to you versus your room, how loud you project your voice, how close you work the mic. I'm at this hang loose distance for the most part the entire time. And I'm also talking across it. You notice I don't use a pop filter. That's because I'm using mic technique where I'm never speaking directly into the capsule. So I'm not blowing plosives into the capsule. But all of that matters as you do your settings. Again, what I'm telling you here may not exactly be what's optimal for you. This is what works for me. You can use this as kind of a foundation for you. Okay, so we're out of the E channel, which is the Unison plugin. The 1176, you can see it here, the low noise version. I used to have that in the chain. I don't anymore. In fact, I'll just turn it on now, and it has kind of a different sound. It's got even a more processed sound. I feel like there's even a little bit of an echo or a delay in there. Anyway, I'm taking that out. I leave it in there. People always say, well, did you not use that? The answer is I used to use it, but I don't anymore. Okay, let's move on to the Neve 1073. This is next in the chain. And again, the chain goes top to bottom. You probably already know that. No gain here on the 1073 Legacy. Not the 1073, it's the 1073 Legacy. Excuse me. No gain. This is a high shelf. I am pushing that. Just a little bit above 1 dot, and I think each one of those is 3 dB or so, 2 or 3 dB, pushing a little bit there. I'm also cutting again on the mids. Now before, you saw me cutting at the 250 range on the E channel, the SSL E channel. So here I'm now cutting a little bit higher at about 700 hertz, and I'm cutting just 1 dot, so maybe 3 dB, but that's also a range where my voice typically needs to be cut there. And then on the low end, I'm cutting at 60. Excuse me, I'm boosting at 60. These knobs are reversed, right? Boost is on the left, cut is turned to the right. I'm boosting at 60 to about maybe 4 dB. So yes, I was boosting at 100 before. Now I'm boosting even a bit lower, but I'm also here using this as my low cut, kind of at the very end of the chain. 80 hertz is where I'm cutting off there. Yeah, that is 80. Sorry, I had to lean in to make sure I could see the screen. 80 hertz is where I'm cutting. Now I've got the EQ on. Let me turn this off. Okay, now I've turned this off, and you can hear that's kind of a difference. If you're really listening critically, especially in that mid region, it sounds a little bit boxy, maybe a little bit nasally, and then all of a sudden when I turn this on right here, it kind of clears all of that up. So that's what this does. There's the 1073 Legacy. And then last but not least, one of my favorite plugins of all time. This is kind of like putting butter on the toast. This is the butter. It's the LA2A Gray Edition. Now, I suppose you could use different LA2As. There's different versions and varieties. This is just the one that I've settled on and liking the most. Limiter mode, you can see where I've got this dial set here for the compression settings at about 2 o'clock, but ultimately gain and peak reduction are what it come down to. Now, I've noticed on all the LA2As that typically the gain and the peak reduction are usually plus or minus 10 from each other. So like right now, gain's at about 30. Peak reduction is a little over 40. So maybe I'm closer to plus 12 or 13, but you understand the idea. And everybody's settings are different, but so long as you're not 30 is the difference one way or the other, for vocals and voice, you're probably on the right track. Now, the biggest thing for me to watch here is when I've got it on gain reduction mode is this needle. And this needle is telling me how hard it's working. Like for example, when I'm whispering, it's only working a little bit, right? Because I'm not talking very loud. I'm doing the ASMR voice. And this is what compression does. It kind of levels everything out at the very end. So when I'm speaking at a lower volume like this, it doesn't immediately freak out when I start yelling 2 seconds later. Sorry, I should have warned you about that. But you saw that needle slam there when I talked louder. It was working really hard. I want the LA2A for normal speech. I want that thing between 0 and -3. And watch as I've been talking here. 0 and -3 almost the entire time. At the normal volume, the normal distance that I'm talking at. This is what you're trying to create, is the settings for how you typically use the mic. It doesn't work if I make these settings and then I put the mic over here. That doesn't work, right? Look at the needle's not moving because I'm not at the right distance. Like everything is off. But if I put this where I normally use it, look, it's right back to where it should be. So that, my friends, is the entire chain. And there's actually one more thing I suppose I should show you. I also have this Pultec, was it HLF3C? All this is another low cut and high cut filter. Let me turn it on. Now, you're saying, why do I use this? If I were doing something like long form narration, I turn this on, I'd probably roll this up on the low side to about 100, and I'd probably roll the top side down, maybe even to, it's 10 kcs, 10 kilocycles, 10,000 hertz. So 110,000, or maybe I'd keep it up here at 15 or 12. But essentially, I'm limiting myself here on the frequency spectrum to try and be less fatiguing on the ears. And maybe 100 is too low, maybe 80 is where I want to be, but I'm really clamping down so that I don't have too much on the low end or the high end. And look, I could roll this thing all the way up. Ooh, that hurt my ears. But you understand how I can manipulate this at the very end. I don't often use that, excuse me. I keep it in the chain just in case, but I honestly, I don't often use that. That's more of a specialty use. I just kind of leave it there because it's in the slot. Okay, so that only took me a dozen minutes to explain, but those are my settings. Again, that's how I use it. You can copy those and start there, but I'm telling you what's ultimately going to be optimal for you with this mic, and if this is your interface, is to find the settings that work best. Start here and manipulate and experiment. So there you go. By the way, if you do home studio stuff and voiceover recording, I'm here to help you. I have a video on that. I actually do consultations, so reach out. I'd be happy to help you come up with your own settings or refine the settings that you're already using. Thumbs up on this video if it provided you some value. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. You know I've got lots more great stuff here on Home Studio Pro.